For more on Indigenous Veterans Day, we're joined by Jennifer Wood. She is a residential school survivor whose father was a World War II veteran. She joins us in studio now. Jennifer, thanks for joining us. How do you reflect on your father's service on this Indigenous Veterans Day?
I reflect on my father's service by honoring and respecting him and being mindful of what he went through as a World War II veteran. I mean, he suffered a great deal, and I want all of Canada to be aware of the First Nations contributions that they made to our country in terms of our First Nation veterans enlisting into war. And many people probably don't know across Canada that the soldiers, by rights didn't have to enlist because, sadly, they weren't considered citizens under the Indian Act. So I think of those things that he powered through and fought for his country, because he was a very proud man.
And it's well documented that Indigenous veterans were not treated well following their services. What were some of the challenges your father faced, and by extension you and your family faced following his service?
Well, following my father's service, I mean, we were greatly impacted as a large family, and me being the youngest. I mean, our father had PTSD, but back in that time, we didn't know he had PTSD. We would often wake up to him screaming, and, we'd have to come and shake him awake. And we were always alerted and woken up in the middle of the night. So, and as you know, there was no services for the veterans at that time. And it wasn't even spoken about. So I don't know how he dealt with it, but certainly our family was impacted by that. And in the same breath, I have to say that, a lot of the soldiers that he fought with side by side in Europe, in Britain, when he came home to his home country that he fought for, he wasn't allowed to associate with them. He wasn't allowed to go into the pub and celebrate with them and sit side by side with his soldier friends, even though they fought in the same war for the same purpose, for the same country.
And why is it important to keep the memory alive of Indigenous veterans?
It's very important to keep the memory alive of the First Nation veterans. As I said before, they didn't have to enlist because they weren't considered a citizen. Nonetheless, they went out and they fought for their country. When my father was interviewed on the reserve, because he was one of the most esteemed elders in our community because of his linguistic language that he knew fluently, he said, we didn't go across and fight with bow and arrows. We fought with rifles, just like our non-native veterans. And, he said things like that. So I want people to realize that our contribution was great. More importantly, the community that I come from, which is Niashingaming, Cape Croker in the English terms, we have the highest enlistment per capita of First Nations soldiers enlisting into war. And that goes right across Canada. I'm sure a lot of our soldiers signed up to save our country.
And finally, do you think more could be done to honor Indigenous veterans?
I certainly do. They could be honored more extensively than they have been. I know they have a monument in Ottawa. I appreciate that. But certainly we could honor them further at our legislatures here in Manitoba, in Winnipeg. We could go straight across Canada and have a monument in honor of our contributions of our soldiers. We could have them mentioned in all the schools. We could have them as part of our history. It could be part of a curriculum on the contributions that they made. There's many, many ways that we can honor our veterans. And I certainly hope in the era of reconciliation, I really sincerely hope that the governments of the day will take that challenge up and get those monuments to recognize our soldiers.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for sharing some of your family's story with us today.
Thank you very much.